All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into something that affects every single one of us, the weird, predictable ways our brains mess up. And we're going to do it using a kind of owner's manual for the human mind, created by a true master. I mean, you've seen it, right? Super smart people, geniuses even, making just boneheaded decisions. Brilliant CEOs making terrible bets. Savvy investors falling for the oldest tricks in the book. So what gives? Well, it turns out the problem usually isn't about IQ. It's about these little glitches, these predictable bugs in our mental software. And the person who's going to guide us through this is the one and only Charlie Munger. Now, you probably know him as Warren Buffett's right-hand man, but Munger was also a brilliant psychologist in his own right. He literally spent decades building a catalog of all the ways our minds can lead us astray. He put it all together in this incredible speech called The Psychology of Human Misjudgment. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with what Munger would call the ego trap, all the ways we fool ourselves. Then we'll look at the influence of others, the pull of the crowd. And this is the cool part. We'll see what happens when these biases crash together in what Munger famously called a Lollapalooza effect. Finally, we'll wrap up with a mental toolkit you can actually use to protect yourself. Okay, first up, the ego trap. This is all about how we fool ourselves. You know, these are the biases that start right inside our own heads, twisting the way we see ourselves and what we think we're capable of. The big one, the cornerstone of the ego trap, is what Munger called excessive self-regard. It's exactly what it sounds like. We have this built-in tendency to think we're just a little bit better, a little bit smarter, and a little more skilled than we actually are. And look, this isn't just about being arrogant. This is the very engine that drives overconfidence. And Munger, in his typical style, didn't mince words. He said we just consistently appraise ourselves on the high side. It's almost a default setting. And this isn't some harmless little personality quirk. It's a serious cognitive bug that can cause massive problems, especially when there's real money or real lives on the line. And don't think for a second this is just a problem for us regular folks. This is a trap that geniuses fall into all the time. Take the story of the hedge fund long-term capital management. I mean, these guys were the definition of brain power. We're talking Nobel Prize winners on staff. Their self-regard was off the charts. They genuinely believed their fancy financial models were infallible, that they had basically solved risk. So they leveraged up like crazy, and when a market shock hit in '98, boom, their perfect system imploded and almost cratered the entire global financial system. It took a federal bailout to stop the bleeding. That's the power of excessive self-regard. Now, feeding right into that overconfidence is its best friend, the over-optimism tendency. It's just a natural part of being human. We're wired to be hopeful, to expect things to turn out better than they probably will. We just ignore the cold, hard statistics. It's that little voice inside that whispers, "Don't worry, it's going to be fine," even when all the evidence is screaming the opposite. You want a perfect example? Look no further than the dot-com bubble. Oh my gosh, that was an absolute masterclass in this stuff. Over-optimism was like a virus. You had entrepreneurs writing these business plans with growth projections that were pure fantasy, totally ignoring the fact that, most new businesses fail. And investors, they were completely hooked on the idea that this time is different because of the internet. They threw billions of dollars at companies with zero profits, sometimes zero revenue, and, let's be honest, zero chance of survival. And we all know how that ended, a spectacular history-making crash. So you can see how our own ego gets us into trouble. But that's only half the story. Because we're not islands, we're social animals. And the people around us, the crowd, they exert this massive, almost invisible force on how we think and act. Munger nailed this with what he called the social proof tendency. Think of it as the herd instinct. When we're not sure what to do, what's our default? We look around to see what everyone else is doing. And if they're all running for the exit, our first instinct is to start running too. We don't even stop to ask if there's a fire. It's basically monkey see, monkey do, but for grown-ups with stock portfolios. And the economist John Maynard Keynes just summed this up perfectly. Munger loved this quote. It's this bizarre truth that for your reputation, it's actually safer to be wrong with everybody else than to be right all by yourself. It's terrifying to go against the grain and succeed, but failing with the herd, well, you can just shrug and say, hey, everyone lost money. It feels safe. Let's go back to the dot-com mess for a second. The social proof was just overwhelming. People weren't sitting down and analyzing balance sheets. No way. They were buying stocks because their dentist was buying them, their brother-in-law was bragging about his profits, and every talking head on TV was screaming buy. The crowd itself became the reason to believe. It was this crazy feedback loop where rising prices just proved that everyone was right.
And if the herd isn't enough, we've got another powerful force at play, our deep-seated instinct to obey authority. I mean, from the time we're kids, we're taught to listen to the experts, the bosses, the people in charge. But this impulse can be so strong that we'll just shut down our own brains, ignore our own judgment, even our own conscience, and do what we're told. And sometimes that can be absolutely disastrous.
The story of the Space Shuttle Challenger is just a gut-wrenching example of this. The engineers, the actual experts, they knew. They knew the O-rings were a huge risk in the cold weather on launch day, and they begged management not to go. But NASA leadership, the authority figure, felt the pressure to launch, and they pushed back hard. In the end, the engineers' expert judgment got steamrolled. They caved to the pressure from above, and the result? Well, it was a national tragedy, all stemming from that instinct to just obey authority.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got our own ego and optimism blinding us. We've got the pull of the crowd, and we've got this deference to authority. Any one of these can cause a lot of damage, but what happens when they all fire at once? Well, Munger had a fantastic name for this phenomenon.
He called it the Lollapalooza tendency. This is probably Munger's most important idea. It's not just one bias at work. It's when 2, 3, 4 of these psychological tendencies all start working in the same direction, feeding off each other. It creates this perfect storm of bad decisions. The result isn't 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's more like 1 + 1 + 1 = 100. The power is exponential.
Let's build a Lollapalooza using the dot-com bubble as our recipe. First, you start with a powerful incentive, what Munger calls the reward tendency, the intoxicating dream of getting rich overnight. Then, you stir in a heavy dose of social proof. Hey, everyone's doing it, I don't want to miss out. Finally, you sprinkle in a generous amount of over-optimism, that dangerous phrase, this time is different. And what do you get? A full-blown market Lollapalooza, an incredibly powerful, self-perpetuating mania. What you've created is this bubble of pure collective delusion. Prices rocket into the stratosphere, totally disconnected from any sort of fundamental reality. And here's the thing about these Lollapalooza effects. They always end the same way, with an inevitable and incredibly painful burst. So I know this all sounds kind of depressing, right? Like our brains are just these buggy machines destined to fail. But Munger wasn't just interested in pointing out all the problems. His whole goal was to give us the tools to fight back. So is that it? Are we just stuck, doomed to repeat these same mistakes forever? Just puppets on the strings of our own psychology? Munger would say absolutely not. The path to getting better, the very first step, is knowing what you're up against. So here it is, your mental toolkit, straight from the Munger playbook. Number 1, awareness. Just knowing that these biases exist, being able to put a name to them, that's huge. Number 2, use checklists. Pilots use them, surgeons use them. Before you make a big decision, run through a checklist of these common errors. Are you being overconfident? Is this social proof? Number 3, and this one's tough, actively seek out dissent. Go find the smartest person you know who holds the opposite view. And don't just argue with them, really listen to them. And finally, my personal favorite, invert. Always invert. Don't just think about how to achieve success. Ask yourself, what would absolutely guarantee that I fail? And then just don't do that. Look, Munger's whole point is that this isn't about being a genius who can spot all the flaws in other people. It's about having the intellectual honesty to find them in yourself. That's the real game. Because once you understand your own personal patterns of misjudgment, that's when you can start making smarter, better choices. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. When you look at this list, which one of these gets you? Which one is your personal kryptonite?